what your choices have been, and what karmic timelines and contracts you have journeyed. The light is calling for the reunification of all aspects of life in this realm now. It is calling for the cleansing of all polarities. It is calling for the rising of all sacred heart centers now. All are being summoned home to the greater light now.
Hi, and welcome to Whole Soul Mastery's Live Well, Live Whole podcast series, where we focus on mind, body, spirit, wellness, fitness, and wholeness, and bringing awareness to the gifts of integrating polarity within so we can more fully embody our light and unity consciousness. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, channel, and a host of the Whole Soul Mastery podcast series. And I'm here today with Paul Panzica. Dr. Panzica is a practicing primary care physician in Mokina, Illinois, and an associate professor at Midwestern University Osteopathic School of Medicine. He holds degrees from the Illinois Institute of Technology and Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. He specializes in pediatrics and internal medicine. He has also studied energy healing, depth psychology, astrology, and anthroposophical medicine, influenced by the work of Carl Jung, Rudolf Steiner, alchemy, gnosis, personal vision, and our culture's vast treasure of ancient and modern mythologies. He endeavors to incorporate these enlightened ideas within the practice of teaching and healing. He's a dedicated disciple for the global emergence of Christ consciousness through the development of our higher I am consciousness soul. And I am so glad to be in this podcast and really this heart-centered conversation with you, Paul. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Marie, for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
It's an honor. For me, it's such an honor. And we are like, this is really, I feel this more and more with the podcasts, is that it's a reunion of souls. We've been in the cycle of separation for so long, thinking that we don't know each other, right? But more and more I have the experience of in Lakesh, which is that expression of I am another you. I remember you, right? I bow to the divine in you, but I actually have this feeling of like, oh, I already know you. I'm just re-meeting you. And so I'm re-meeting you in this podcast again today. And I'm so glad you're joining me. And maybe for our listeners, you've journeyed quite a bit this lifetime. And those were some pretty big words I had to get through. That anthroposophical medicine is always a tongue twister for me. So maybe you can share with us a little bit of just your journey, your life's journey into medicine and your journey into awakening, and really feeling your purpose and living that more fully now.
Yes. So it's been a long journey, and it's clearly not one lifetime, and that this journey began a very long time ago through many lifetimes in the past, and I think it's something that I always had known about. And when I started the process of reawakening, so to speak, it came so fast to me. It was almost as if I was reminding myself of things that I knew when I was a child, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So it started through, let's just say that as a child, I always had these questions, which I thought everybody had, which was, why am I here? What is God? What happens to me when I die? And I had these as a child. I had these as young as I can remember. And I remember appealing to my elders for answers, and didn't really find a lot of great answers, or answers that were satisfactory to my search. We took a decidedly different approach, let's say, or maybe it was a common approach for the times, which was the secular path. And so it was a secular path where we were going to travel, or our family was traveling. It was a path that always has this promise of answering those questions, but never gives you the answer until you evolve to the point where you realize that they're not even interested in your question. They have no interest in answering the questions along that path. So it became a very existential journey, so to speak. And in the end, when you exhaust all of the external resources for what you're looking for, or how you're going to answer those questions, you finally realize that it's not outside of you anymore. It never was. And so now you have to look into yourself. And remember all of those scriptural writings and mythologies and fairy tales that you were told as a child, and then you became an adult and you developed an ego and you realized that they were nonsense. Well, guess what? You need to reevaluate those things again, because that's really where the answer was embedded all along. And that's kind of how the journey began for me, because I realized that at a certain point in my life, it was fairly impoverished because there was nothing else in the external realm or the external world for me to find. It was all, I looked at all the philosophies, I looked at all the external religions, and everything I found faults with, or I found imperfections with, or maybe they excite you for a little bit, and then you realize, oh no, that's not going to hold up to because all of these questions aren't answered, and so that you're forced to a certain degree to go back and to revisit those things that you discarded as a child. And it's within that experience, looking at it again, where you start to find the path back into the place that you need to be, which is childhood. It's the kingdom of childhood, really, that's really where it goes. As far as a soul journeying on this path, it's first of all liberating to be able to talk to somebody who I can actually express these thoughts to without being judged, because that's difficult also. But in the process of awakening, which started at about the early midpoint of my life, you start to realize who you are. But it's not really, it really has to do with the recognition of others as to who you really are. And that's one of the things that I used to teach, was that how do you truly see yourself? And in the mythology, specifically in the mythology of Narcissus, you can't see yourself. You can only see your reflection. And that reflection is an image that, to a certain degree, your ego has created. And so how do you actually see yourself truly is through how I think others perceive you, and the reactions that others have. Sometimes it may be your own children that give you an insight that you never realized before. And sometimes it's somebody that you never really knew that well, or thought you didn't know that well, who tells you some of the most extraordinary things about who you really are. So I don't feel comfortable answering who I was, or all I can say, and by definition, what I mean by that is that we start going through a process of stripping off all the veneer, of who we are. So, it's difficult, especially in my profession, but in anyone's profession, when you ask, who are you? The answer is, well, usually I identify with my profession. I'm a physician, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm an electrician, or an artist, or a writer. But that's not who we really are, right? That's a facet maybe of who we've been or who we are right now. But we're eternal beings, and we've been many other things before in the past. We're something, many things right now in the present, and we will be many things in the future. So if you start stripping off the facades, you get down to the essence of who we are. And I think that the essence of who we are is our true eternal self. Um, and the only possible thing I could say about that is I am, right? And so I am, I exist. And I have no idea really who I am other than I am here, I exist, I am eternal. I'm eternal, and that's it. And by contemplating that mystery of I am, that brings into so many other things, but specifically, especially in our mythology, we can look at I am related to the I am, related to I am the I am, and we can see how we fit within that relationship. And I think that's been a source of contemplation for me for quite a while, you know.
Mm.
So maybe that wasn't answering the question completely in regards to how I started moving down this path, because I went down a very secular path looking for the answer, which why did I go to, for instance, medical school? Why did I go along this educational path? And I think a lot of us go into it. In fact, I think the most important reason is to help people. I mean, we want to hear that from our candidates when they're going into the medical profession. I had other reasons too. I had those reasons that I just talked about, those questions. And I thought that maybe perhaps through this form of education, I would come to an answer.
Wow.
And the answer is I didn't find it. I was more confused when I finished the process of medical education than when I started regarding answering those questions. So that forced me to move along additional pathways, which led to depth of psychology and theosophy and anthroposophy and Jungian thought and mythology and alternative forms of healing. And that just been going on for the last 20 plus years. So I guess that's how I got to where I'm at now.
That was so beautiful. I was just drinking in, because few people even attempt to language that deeper, multi-layered, multi-dimensional journey that we take as these spiritual beings having these human experiences, and allow the quest. Like, you consciously, sounds like from a young age, even if you didn't even have a language for it, you were allowing the quest. You were source energy seeking to know itself, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I felt a few things that came in there, but we can focus on each one of these little things. But when I was about 7, 8, or 9, it's actually fairly common of people in the Christian faith, at least, is this concept of Christmas and Santa Claus. And I brought this up in another podcast recently, but it's coming up again, maybe because it's fall here in the US, or we're approaching December. And that's a time where we're culturally conditioned at a certain age bracket to go from that place of being that inner child and being in the kingdom of God as an inner child who believes in magic and believes in the infinite and is seeking and curious and all those beautiful qualities we have inside us as a source energy and as a source essence. And many of us, I'll say personally, I felt my divinity, and I especially felt it in the magic of Santa Claus. Like, I felt it in the magic of Christmas time, from the candle lights to the gift giving to the thinking of others and the food, and this being that was so generous and giving and was, loved all children, all aged children, right? Whether we were adults or little. And there was just, and I had a glee in my spirit, which was that very active, awake inner child that I came in to this world. That's what the Color of Magic story is really all about. That's what this YouTube channel is named. And it's named after the book that I wrote of a star child coming in with that completely open heart, believing, not totally having the veil of forgetfulness, remembering that magic of source energy. And it was alive and well in me, even though I had some dysfunctions in my family. I still had a very magical essence inside me. And I was a creator, and I always colored as a child, and I loved being out in nature. And And then Christmas, when I was about 7, 8, or 9, let's just take 8 as an average. I was skipping home because it was the last day of school before Christmas break, and I was like just giddy of just feeling the magic of the energy of Christ's birth and all the energies that I felt. And I didn't need to be taught that. I felt it, I knew it. And then somebody walking home from school with me, one of my classmates, a neighbor, said, looked at me and kind of just cocked her head and was just like, "You don't still believe, do you?" Like, and I remember looking at her like, why is she asking me that question? Like, who doesn't believe, right? And I went through this experience for the first time of like, she's not having what I'm having, right? And it was obvious on her face because the pain in the way she was talking to me was evident. And she was clearly trying to read me the riot act that you shouldn't be so joyful because the whole thing's not true. And I was like, well, I know it's true. And I skipped on home and I went to chat with my mom to say, oh, I'm so sad because so and so down the street doesn't believe anymore. And my mom was like, well, and then there's the conversation that you have where they say, but you were always so into it and when you were so excited about it. And there comes a time where you realize it's just a fairy tale. And basically, magic and the magic of belief and all of that connection with your spirit, it's religiously and also culturally conditioned out of us. And then we have all these studies that like kids have these stages of identity development or just the developmental process of young children. We say, oh, they stop believing at this age. We have all these cultural conditions that come in that help them with that process to stop believing, to go through that disillusionment experience. And my world was shattered at that point. I think that's when I remember, and I tell it in my story, The Color of Magic, which is available on this YouTube channel. People can search it and you can listen. But I was like, okay, well, my parents just forgot then. It was just these 3 people, my neighbor and my parents and my family. They're the only ones who don't believe, and I'm going to help them. And I kind of went to everybody in my church and I went to, people around me, and everyone kind of looked at me like, no, there is no magic. That's just a nice little children's story. That's what we do. But then we have to grow up. We learn the truth and we grow up and we find other ways to participate in the world. And that was what was kind of mirrored to me over and over. So I learned how to go to school and get really good grades. And at a certain point, I just kind of tucked that wound inside me of the 80% loss of Santa. That's what I would say. The 80% lost of that inner child glow. I didn't give it all up, but I just tucked it deep inside where I wasn't looking to anybody else because I'd already talked to a lot of people who didn't believe anymore. And I didn't want to ask anyone else. Like I'd already heard the whole story. No one believes. No one believes like I believe. So I did get quiet about that. And I just kind of quietly had my little experience of that. But I got into the grades and the athletics and all the things and ways that you can thrive and succeed in college and scholarships and all of those things. And I got all my degrees and I felt very, I was doing what you're expected to do, right? Still seeking like I've always felt something's not right with this world. Like something's not right here. And then when I went through my own trauma, which was a big catalyst for me, I just turned 33 when the biggest energies of the trauma burst into my life. And when I went into a 5-year catalyzing experience to sort of basically strip away all the layers of the untruths that I had accrued from the conditioning, and I peeled back the layers one by one, like my friend Vanita is like peeling back the onion, and you're tearing up and there's pain, there's tears and emotions and pain, and you're going through that process. I still couldn't find a way to transmute that experience. And I was connecting with my guides at that point. That was when I realized nothing from this world was going to help me with the trauma I was in and the tragedy my family was going through. And what did Spirit say? It was calling out my inner child, and it would say, color the magic again. They had 2 phrases. I would say, how long is the suffering going to last? And Spirit said, when you are ready. I had no idea what to do with that for about 5 years. But they also would say over and over, it's time to color the magic again. And one of those days where I was just barely breathing. Some people listening to this know those days where you feel like just the wind has gone out of you, like the wind went out of my sails. I just felt like I had a punch to the gut for about 5 years time in this deep darkness, and connecting with the guides all the while, but still just swirling in this pain and suffering in my family. One day I was like, well, what do I have to lose? I'll color something. I will just begin to color. And I had little insights that had come from the guides and little inspirations that they'd given me. And I started creating little bumper stickers, and I started creating little designs that went on a mug, like just a few words at a time, but with color and design. And I was doing it more for me, and because that's the guidance that I got. And as I created, I got more oxygen. As I created, I was remembering. As I created, I felt less pain. As I was listening, the magic was awakening in me inside again. And then I went from the bumper stickers and the t-shirts and things like that to all of a sudden I was channeling stories. I was channeling these stories that became a Shine Your Light book series. And I have 8 books in that series now, and I was going to get somebody else to illustrate it. And then that wasn't successful. So the guides were saying, what were they saying? Color the magic. You, Marie, don't, outsource it to anybody else. It's your magic to color. And so that's exactly what I did. And lo and behold, as I published book after book, I self-published it because a lot of publishers didn't want to publish those stories that were about nature and our inner child and remembering and the light inside all of us, right? Nobody wanted to touch that. And so finally I was like, then I'll publish it. So I published my books. And this links back to the Christmas story and the Christ consciousness and the magic that's inside all of us that we get conditioned out of. Is I was remembering the stories. I was remembering the mythologies that are symbology that's true about us. And children have the eyes to see that. And it's the conditioned adults or teenagers or whatever age we lose the magic that we just can't see it anymore. And I said this with somebody else on a recent podcast, but it's like the Polar Express. Have you ever heard that story?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right. And it's just like, the bell still rings for those who still believe, kind of at the end of that story, but where everybody else couldn't hear the ringing of that Christmas bell right off Santa's sleigh. And the bell ringing was very faint for me for many years, but it's like a full song now, right? And sometimes we need those catalytic experiences, but it's interesting that you were connecting with that as a child. You had this presence of asking questions and being curious, and that alone can be an experience, like you said, where the magic or something just slowly dissipates out of your system. Because when you see parents have that kind of gray look, they've lost some of the magic. They don't really know how to field those questions or meet those questions. We go through this process of disbelieving. Did you get cynical in your journey, or did you just feel like you were just questing, just listening and learning?
Oh, so I was skeptical, not cynical.
Skeptical, right?
So I just wanted to say that I had almost this very similar experience that you just described.
Wow.
I was around the same age, maybe 7 years old. I think I was just in early grade school, 3rd grade, 2nd grade. And I also had a Christmas experience. So it was a dream it was archetypal dream. And I didn't know what this was back then. All I knew is that I was having a dream about Christmas. And in the dream was a father, it was like a king. And it was a celestial king of some sort, almost like Jupiter, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the sense that I had. And then there was a celestial mother in there too, a spiritual looking mother. And it was in a Christmas motif, but it was very intimate. We were in a room, and then there was like a king and a queen, and then there was a child in the room also. And the whole room was radiating gold and silver, so to speak. And so we saw similar motifs in the room of a tree and spheres, and but those are the only characters in the room. And I was in the room, and I was being given a gift, And the gift was not like a toy or something mundane or not that important. It was something that I truly needed.
Mm,
And I don't know what it was. Well, I know what it was now, it was the dream itself.
mm,
But it was something of great importance, of great value that went beyond anything in the material physical world.
mm,
And it was just this feeling of overwhelming peace and love that was just, it was almost like I was in the manger, so to speak. It was like that. It was just like just being present in that still point. That was the vision I had, and it was this amazing love and this amazing peace, and I just couldn't believe it that this was happening. And all I was doing was just being present in that moment.
mm,
This was the dream. So,
mm.
so then I woke up, and it was the 25th of June. It was exactly the furthest point from Christmas. And I was a little kid, and I was like so happy to like get up and run out and look and see the tree and everything. And when I really realized what was going on, I went, what? And it was just a beautiful summer day. And it was like, that's just so strange. Why would I have a dream like this? But that presence has always stayed with me regarding that time of the year. And it was almost like on an axis, so to speak. It was like the opposition of it. So now you had to wait 6 months until this really happened. But that's how I always feel about the season, specifically about that celebration. It's never left me. But and it's like, to me, it's like what it should be about, but it never is. We always try to achieve that through our celebrations, but we never really get to that level of love and that level of peace and that level of appreciation and that level of outpouring for one another. But it is to me a cosmic experience, or that there was this presence of this true king and this true queen and the child that was birthed through that reunion, and it was all there. And that's how the spiritual realm speaks to me. It speaks to me through visionary dreams. But I was 7 years old at the time. I had no idea what was going on, and that was about it until I was about 35 years old, and then it just shut off. I stopped having those types of visions.
Wow.
But you bring up something very important, and maybe we can touch on that. Is that there are certain periods within the yearly cycle that we live within, and you do such a wonderful job in your channeling and in the way that you manifest that, is that everything's tied to that seasonal rhythm. That seasonal rhythm, that outpouring from the spiritual realm, that manifests itself through the seasons, through the time that we're living in and through we're experiencing. But it was one of the things that I had just come to realize within the last maybe month, is that that as the seasons change, and we have these major changes in the seasons, the solstice, right? So the winter solstice, and then we have the summer solstice. Those are the major axis where we truly celebrate. Regardless of where you're at as far as your consciousness, those are major celebrations, and you could take out of those for what they are, but we're really celebrating Christmas. We're celebrating the 4th of July. We're celebrating the solstice. That's exactly what it is. And human beings have done this since the beginning of the earth, since the beginning of their existence here. But there's another axis. And we go through the solstice, and as we come back, we hit a center point in time, and we hit a center point in movement, and that is the equinox. And when we hit that equinox, that's our spring equinox, that's another major holiday. It's another major celebration. And in that moment in time that we hit, it's about the rebirth of the human soul, the rebirth of Mother Nature, the rebirth of everything, really, as we tap into this. It's an amazing experience. It's another focal point in our journey through the linear time continuum, as it's manifesting through the seasons, as it's manifesting through our life. Well, Marie, there's another point, and it's missing. And you kind of mentioned it already, it's forming a cross. And so on the top, you have your winter solstice, and the bottom you have your summer solstice. And then you have as things start to oscillate around, if you look at the movements of the earth itself, we have a spring celebration right around the time of the vernal equinox, of the spring equinox, which is how we determine our Easter celebration. But where's the other celebration? It's not there. It's not there. And it's this time right now as we're speaking when it should be celebrated. There's a hole in our life because the fourth point along the equinox, the axis of the equinox, it's not there.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because we just had like the September equinox, right?
You've been writing about it. I mean, this is why I listen to you. You've been channeling this. And I'm going, oh my God, this is the energy that you're talking about. What are you talking about right now? You're talking about heroism. You're talking about regaining your sovereignty.
Right.
That's what this is about. It's the opposite end. So let's try to explain this. The opposite end of this is 180 degrees away from this, would be going from the springtime into the fall. The ancients knew that they needed to anchor this time into the seasons of the earth. Whether they were consciously aware of it or not, they did this through astrology, and they anchored it into not the actual backdrop of the heavens, but they did it into the time sequences that we have to live through, and specifically to the seasons, so that through the seasonal patterns, we use the same reference points as we did 2,000 years ago, right? So when the spring equinox hits, that's the starting point. They call it the 0 point of Aries. That's the point where the astrology starts anew, even though that point in the distant references to the heavens, it's not in Aries anymore, it's in Pisces. But it doesn't matter because they had to arrest it for the times that we're living in today. And the times that we're living in today, it's more important than ever to recognize that there's an oppositional energy to the spring celebration. So what is this all about? And so it's about regenerating the heroic impulses within the human soul. And it's celebrated in the time of Libra. Now, we're not in the time of Libra. Well, we are in Libra astrologically. We look at this, but there's different ways to interpret it. But if you look at the distant perspective, we're in Virgo right now, but it doesn't matter. They arrested it to the point where, it all got arrested right around the time of Jesus. And Jesus's mission was not completed, but at his death, it was just initiated. So we're going through an entire age of Pisces, which is we're going through this 2,000 plus years of transformation as we're moving now into an age of Aquarius. And so the time got fixed to that point. So what's happening now, if you look at the autumn or the fall equinox, it's in Libra. Now, why is Libra important? And Libra is important because it's about balance, and it's about the scales, right? It's about scales.
Right.
Why are the scales important? Well, the scales are extremely important. So the question is, well, those are scales, but who holds the scales, right? Who holds on to the scales? Who presides over the scales? And the answer to that is historically, or in times where consciousness was, and I think there were times on this earth where consciousness was greatly expanded to where it is today. We've gone into a dark age of consciousness. Those scales were ruled by or controlled by the divine feminine. She held the scales. Wow. And she's the only one fit to hold the scales, right? But if you look at our mythologies, the last goddess to leave the earth was the goddess that held the scales. And humanity got so fouled up and corrupted through egotistical distortions that she finally had to let go of the scales. So, how do we get control of the scales? That's the question. And the answer is through the archangel, through the archangel. And there was a celebration that occurred in earlier times that was devoted to the archangel right now. So it was actually in ancient times was celebrated tomorrow on October 10th. Today would be the eve of that celebration.
Wow.
Now it's changed. So sometimes it's celebrated in late in late September. So in September, it varies. Somewhere between the 28th of September and October 10th is depending on the culture and depending on the time when we actually celebrate this time. And we're living right now in this time as you write about it. And I'm like, well, you know, you're channeling this energy in what you're writing because that's what this is. So the archangel specifically is Michael. They're supposed to say Michael, but we call him Michael. So the archangel Michael. Now he is the archetype of the dragon slayer.
Mm.
And the dragon has taken over the control of our society. The dragon is who holds the scales now. The scale, the question we can ask is the universe? This is one of my questions. Is the universe just? Is the universe fair? And from our lower 3D perspective, the answer is no, it is not. People get away with murder. It's just terrible. How can we say that it's just? Well, in my experience, in my awakening experience, through my experience, it had to be demonstrated to me from a very visceral level that the universe is exceedingly fair. It's exceedingly just. In fact, the law of the universe, if you read Blavatsky or any of the great esoteric scholars, but in esoteric terms, the law of the universe is balance, which is directly related to karma.
Right.
So that has to be reinstated. And it's reinstated through the resurrection of the impulses of the archangel. But they have to occur now, not externally, but they have to occur through the individual soul. And who's the Archangel Michael he's known as the countenance of God, the face of God, right? So, okay, great. He's an archangel. He's got the face of God. You know what? If you actually look at the spiritual teaching, the face of God is your face. You are the face of God. We're all the face of God when we're in ascended consciousness, right? So the Lord of hosts, who is the Archangel Michael, and the face of God, who is you have to channel that energy within you, and you become the face of God, right? You express it, you manifest it in that way. So that this is the celebration that's missing, right? This was it. This I think is going to become, if we can get through our hardships, it's going to balance out the season. It's going to be something that we're going to have great reverence for. It's just as important as any of the other seasons. And in certain esoteric groups, it had become one, but they never understood the real reason behind it. They celebrated the dragon slayer and all these other things. And we can see it from a child's perspective. It would be wonderful to be able to be a knight again, right? A knight for a day and all these, but it's far greater than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we're trying to reinstill or reestablish, because the archangel has to take control of the scales again. And the scales will then be handed over to the divine feminine. The archangel is the archetypal knight. The archangel has to champion, right? He's the champion of the divine goddess. We all have that energy within us. We all have this knightly energy within us, some more so than others, because it's an Aries energy. And if you look at astrology, not all of us carry that energy, but there is enough of us because who can champion that. and can place those scales back into the goddess's hands, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing right now at this time.
That is so, again, I just sort of melt in the what you stream through, how people describe sometimes my channelings. I'm having that experience of you when all that soul's wisdom and all the journey that we've done, not just this lifetime, but other lifetimes, and it comes to us more clear with that clearer soul vision. And we embrace the hero's journey, and we review the gems of the journeys in lifetimes that didn't feel just, that didn't feel fair. And as we continue to walk the hero's journey, that, brave epic hero that came for these times, each one of us in our own way is finding our way into embracing that journey. We're coming around that story arc, I think many of us are, to bring it full circle, to bring the balance back, to bring the balancing of 0 point, right? The tension game, the energy of tension that's in the figure eight, the duality. It can be infinity and quantum expansion, or it can be trapping us on the loop of duality where we never really get off that loop and onto the hero's journey. But when we start to ask these questions, and when I hear you speak of just, things, I know it a different way, like the guides bring it through in these frequencies. And interestingly, I've always been somebody who finds astrology interesting when other people share it with me, but I don't have any recollection really of, and I'm not taking any classes or that. So when I hear people like you who know these things and I see what came through, and I'm like, wow, the guides knew, some through time version of me must know, and the vessel of me knows how to let go and let that information come through. It is amazing how it is inside all of us and how it shows up, even if we don't understand it in the way that you understand it, or lots of astrologers and people who tune into the cosmology of things. It's in there, we all know it, it's just our level of allowance in some ways of it. And there is this powerful time surging now in the fall of 2020, as we are looking, like you say, returning to sovereignty, right? Is that the other piece, that claiming of the hero energy that's coming into balance with ourselves?
Of course. So just a couple of things. Number one, I never took an astrology class in my life. It just came to me. That's that. Now, in all fairness, my wife's an astrologer, so I have that, right?
Yes.
But I kind of was looking at it before her, and as one of my gifted students years ago started saying, "I want to do your astrology," and as he was speaking to me again, it's funny, but I have an aunt who did my astrology as right at the beginning of my life, and I was told some things about it, but I didn't develop another interest in that, or second interest in that, until much later. And then my wife is a gifted astrologer, there's no doubt about that, but it's almost like we can speak a second language. It's like when we start talking about it, I mean, I've absorbed a lot of it through her, but this is what it just came to me recently, and it's we live mythology through astrology. This is our life. We live mythology through astrology. And so that's happening to us, whether or not we accept it or not. Those forces are working through us. And many of the things that you've talked about before, and one of the things that I just come to realize over the recent times is that, that Lion's Gate portal's been there forever. And it's useless to us if we don't recognize that it's there.
Right.
So we have to, they always say that in our New Age community, they always say, you're co-creators of your own reality. That's something we've heard many, many times. That's kind of true. But if you're not working with the natural forces that are guiding us and harnessing those natural forces, and you're working against those forces, you can't create anything that's worth anything. So we have to understand how those natural forces are flowing through our environment, through Mother Nature, and through the stars, and through the astrological signatures that are there. in order for us to become aware of those things and to harness those energies. You know, so yeah.
It's so powerful how it is inside us. And I think, number one, like, I love how you said that too. I mean, I don't even think I can say that phrase. We're living our mythology through the astrology, right? Is that how you said that?
We can say it in many different. We're living mythology.
We're living.
We have we have the energies of the gods placed within us.
Right.
You have Venus within you. You have Mercury within you. You somewhere in your soul, it exists at a certain aspect. And in some people, those energies resonate stronger than in others. But you have all of those energies within us. The gods created us and empowered us to be greater than them.
Right.
As ascended human beings, we are greater than the gods of our mythologies,
Right.
even though we think we're not. That is our potential. And if you look at all of the esoteric teachings, once you bring all of those energies into a balanced state, you ascend into a higher realm of consciousness, which makes you godlike, or makes you greater than the gods. Because let's face it, Zeus had some real psychological problems, and Hera had some problems, and Venus had some problems. I mean, they're not perfect individuals.
Right.
They're aspects of who we are, and those energies have been placed within us. But we're a more holistic composite of all of those energies, that have to be manifested, have to be balanced. Our job is to balance all of those energies, to bring it to a still point, to ascend our consciousness when all of those energies are working in harmony.
Right. Bring it all together. And so, when you really feel, not just hear and think, but when you really feel what you're saying, and the power of these times, and the power of the Lion's Gate portal, and the solstices and the equinox, and then you see the energies, rolling into the fall of 2020. We have October, November, December. We have an election in the USA. What do you see now? And this is a loaded question, so you could take it wherever you want to go. But how do you see that integration? It's like order out of chaos, kind of, as we move through. We have to bring, for many of us that are going to choose to bring these incredible aspects of duality, and all those aspects inside us back into that 0 point where we can access our sovereignty, and we're emancipating ourselves and also emancipating this planet. How do you see that playing out on the planet?
Well, you already said it in your last video, and you said something very profound. You said that we're living in a prison planet, and we've heard that before, but we got very good at doing time. I love that. Like a prison, like a prisoner. We got very good at doing time. And we turned it into an art form. We learned how to deal with the blows and the abuse, and we realized that if we don't make a lot of waves, and we can get by. You can learn to love your jailers or your slave masters.
Yes.
And the hand that feeds you, and beats you at the same time. We've learned to do that very well. And then there were some of us at the beginning that are saying, that this is just an illusion. This is a facade. Life can be much better than this. And my soul knows this. And life isn't unfair, but life in the universe is extremely just. You said that in your last video too, to a certain degree, that the creator didn't create an environment for you to live like this, right? Exactly. So the process is alchemical. The process is, when we study alchemy, the genius of people like Jung was that he looked at this and he realized, there's a lot of nonsense in alchemy, but there's something psychologically happening that's reconfiguring the soul when you go through this process. And the process always begins with suffering. It always begins with stress. It always begins with depression. There's different names for it, but it's chaos at the beginning. And most people will not go through the process because it's too psychologically painful to do it. They don't want to knock over their little apple cart. They don't want to destroy their little fiefdom that they've built, and how they've managed to self-medicate through many, many different forms of distractions and entertainment and all these other things. They're getting through okay. Well, the catalyst to all of this is the chaos, is the deception, is the lies. And as you have said so beautifully, and so many others, that the year of 2020 is clear vision. And what we're seeing now is becoming unacceptable. You said it too in one of your lectures earlier this, in fact, the one before last.
Oh.
You said that, I'll tell you what you said.
Yeah, please. Because I just streamed. I'm like, what did I say?
What you said was, what is undeniable, that regardless of what's happening in the world, right, it's affecting you.
Yes.
You are not comfortable with what's happening. Every single human being that has a lucid consciousness about, that's consciously aware, is not at peace with what's happening. Yes. It's causing this agitation. It's an alchemical process that you're living through, whether or not you welcome it into your life or not. You can't escape it, and that's what's happening. So, I mean, if you look at the astrology of the thing, and that's way beyond what I want to talk about right now, but I am doing a lecture on that, which will be available next week, regarding the fact that you can't escape this is your destiny. We're all voluntarily decided to come here to have this experience. Now, how it's going to play out on the physical plane, or the mundane plane, or the linear time continuum, I don't know. You want me to speculate? I'll speculate, but this is what I think. I think that every single institution that served us at one point is destined to fail. Every single institution, regardless of whether that's medicine, education, politics, religion, they're all on the verge of collapsing. And how that I would say that, don't look for an answer in the political spectrum. It won't be there. Whatever's going to happen is already going to happen. And I think that if you want to get engaged in the political process and feel as though that effort is going to make a difference, then do it, because that's what your soul needs to do. But on the other hand, I look at it and I say that it's a failing system. It'll fail, and then we'll go into a crisis, and then we need to work on ourselves, like you've been saying all along. We need to work on ourselves. We need to work on our capacity to forgive ourselves of our trespasses as we forgive others who trespass against us. We need to find what's divine within us, and we need to be alchemists. And one of the things that is so beautiful about alchemy, and it just occurred to me this year, was that an alchemist welcomes the adversity. The alchemist welcomes the chaos. They welcome the challenge, because they understand that that's a catalyst for change. And the alchemist takes a bad situation and catalyzes it into a gemstone. It catalyzes it into something very powerful and good. And even though there are beings and dark entities that are causing these disruptions, that are trying to imprison us, they don't understand, because their consciousness can't see beyond that scheme, that what they're doing is catalyzing great transformation within us. Right. And that is where we're going. I think that's where we're going. Now, how we're going to get there, you said it so beautifully in your last lecture, and I'll remind you of what you said.
Please.
Okay. So you said that we're between the time of
no longer and the not yet.
The time of no longer and the time of not yet. Well, that's exactly where we are. We're in this void. We're in this darkness. And, I always had a sense of where I was going until the last 3 to 4 years, where I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like in this void. I can't see the future. I still can't see it.
Because it's not a physical map. It's not a physical map anymore. We could follow the linear, progression of things and the dots on a map, but now we've lifted off the page, and we're at vibrational coordinates now. it is a vibrational journey. We're on ascension that they keep showing me isn't really a physical destination as much as it is a vibrational frequency.
Right. So let's get a room together of you and me and all of the people that inspire us. And when we're in that situation, when we're, you know, this is nice, but I really want to meet you face to face.
Right.
And I want a room full of people. I want a world of people like this. But when you get into these consciousness conferences and these times that draw people together, in their hearts, they know what the future is going to be. We all have the same vision.
Yes.
It's the same vision. There's a tremendous amount of consensus that is all, doesn't even have to be expressed. We already know what this is. We know where we're going. The question is how we get there. But what you want is what I want, and what any ascended soul. You know, that's the funny thing about what Jung said. He said that. He said that there's no such thing as objective truth in the physical plane of consciousness. He said you can't develop consensus regarding this. Why? Because it has to be filtered through our ego. It has to be filtered through our personality characteristics. It has to be filtered through our senses. The biggest argument that my wife and I have ever had in our life,
Wow.
was based on the color of the stoplights. We still argue about this. The color of the stoplights, right? So I always say that the stoplight's green, the stoplight is yellow, and the stoplight is red, right? Green, yellow, and red.
Right.
Makes the argument that it's green, it's orange, and it's red. Now, so we have these big arguments, right? This is something, it's like not really an argument, but it's like how we rib ourselves. But that really turned out to be our biggest argument, because I was conditioned to believe that the stoplights are, you know, green, yellow, and red. We're all taught that, right? But sometimes the stoplight is not really yellow. It's more like an orangish color, or it's a hybrid between the colors. And I have seen orange stoplights too. So if we can't agree on the colors, which you can't agree on because people perceive colors differently, they perceive sound differently, they perceive the physical reality differently, and there's 7.5 billion of us. How are you going to reach consensus? And you can't do it on the physical plane, right? You have to do it through an ascended level of consciousness, through spiritual experience, through and that's what Jung was trying to make the point. He said the only true objective experience is outside of the linear time continuum, is outside of physical reality. And so you have these experiences now which are conveying to us a greater level of truth. Now, it's hard to express that. We keep that within ourselves. I know I have this truth within me. I have this vision within me. I have this path that I'm moving towards. I don't know how to manifest it. And it turns out that the only thing I can do to manifest it is to be my genuine self. And that's all I can do. I can't control anything else. So when we have these experiences, you know, that is the artistic experience. It's a creational experience. And we can express it through art because there's where the deeper, profounder truths exist. And maybe we should create that realm with around us. I think that's really you said that also in this experience that we're having now, that you needed to color, you needed
Color
to bring
the magic.
You need to color the what?
The magic.
Color the magic. It's an artistic experience. And so we need to put value back into human endeavors, into human experiences, into artistic endeavors. And that's the kind of life that we've been trying to live, although I don't know how successful I'm in, because I can have this beautiful, uplifting discussion with you, and then I have to go to Costco or, you know, and then I just go right back into three-dimensional reality. And it's like, right?
See, but I a little bit, it's just, I deal with 3D as well. We all do. And it, you know, especially if you have to have a conversation, people in the language of 3D, and then we're like blissing out over here in the quantum level and in this higher consciousness level. But I also more and more see myself as like, you know, it's like a undercover agent of like, I am a star being undercover in Costco, you know.
Well, that's exactly right. You know, you're a stabilizing agent, and so your presence enough,
Yes.
your aura enough, is a stabilizing agent. We could fly off the handle and we could start causing all kinds of social
Oh,
disruptions.
yeah.
That's not why we're here, And in the past, we may have done those things. Actually, that's something else you brought up, and I wanted to bring that up as a point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you follow any of the other channelers? Are you familiar with any of the other, people that are channeling information?
For sure. Do you have somebody in mind that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, there's certain channelers that are really like, you're like my favorite.
Oh, I like to hear that.
You really are, because I mean, the resonance that you're bringing through is just like, well, that's, yeah, right. Amen to that, right? But no, but some of the earlier channelers, one that I like a lot was Lee Carroll. He's still
Yeah.
around, and the Cryon, and that he channels Cryon, the Pleiadian message. And so the Pleiadian message is something that I have a really strong affinity towards. I don't know why, but I always did. As soon as I found out about this was before I wrote my book and all these other things, I just kind of lost it, and I couldn't get enough of the information. Then I said, no, wait a minute, do your work, get your book done, do all these things. And then after that was all done, I unleashed it. And then I really started going full force into people that were channeling these messages. But Lee is always about, he's appealing to the old souls, which is clearly what I am, is this old soul. And one of the things that we have dealt with for ages is injustice. And we've seen time and time again, evil triumph, And I have friends, people that I've met at these conferences who I barely know, and they tell me they recognize me from previous lives. Wow. And I don't remember it, but I'm like, well, you know what? Because they'll tell me things that I've only thought about, and I thought those were my personal, deepest, thoughts. And now they're telling me about me in another life and about what I did, and that is a reflecting upon me as in another life. And I think there's a lot of trauma that I see this especially in a lot of the women that I know. The divine feminine has been
decimated,
imprisoned and abused and marginalized to such a high degree, and that you see that, and that was from previous existences, and it's very difficult for an old soul to let down their guard and to say that we're finally living in a point now where the outcome is going to be different, right? But the outcome can only be different if we do something different. If we no longer take up arms and try to fight against this evil force, but in fact, we allow the divine feminine to manifest and allow love to take the lead. That's the only way I think we can get through this.
And it's interesting that you said that. I haven't said it necessarily in a podcast yet. And there's obviously in the duality, there's been the masks, no masks, and the whole game that's being played. But there is this old soul essence in me and this awareness. I connected with somebody on YouTube that's very educated and is educating people truly about the laws of the illegal. Masks can't be mandatory and the laws behind that. But
right, let's say that right now we're on exactly the same page, and more so. If you unleashed that, you would, I don't think that's the point of this discussion.
Right,
but it is being used divisively, and it has nothing to do with this preventing the spread of illness.
Exactly. And that's where the part of me that I think has lived these old soul lives, we've lived the persecution, we've lived the injustices, and somewhere inside me, I don't know if it's the inner child, I don't know what it is, but there's this awareness of I can feel the theater playing out, and it can get very serious. There's some places where obviously there's a tremendous amount of violence over these things and people are getting very agitated, but I'm not calling that into my field right now and any kind of resistance. I know the value of 0 point, and I stay in the 0 point, and I stay as much as I can playful about it, because I know I do just feel like this. I smile the whole time I'm shopping in Costco. Like I feel that giddy thing again of like, I know something else. And so we can all have our masks on, but or we can just take them off and laugh. Like, there's
Right.
something inside me that knows. And I think that that presence and that essence, not mocking, but truly the just the inner child who knows like that there's, I don't know, I don't know if it's mischievous, I'm not quite sure, but it feels good and gleeful of like, we've endured this so many lifetimes. And I think it's part of setting the divine feminine free. We're birthing something else. And while you have us masked, like you said, the divine feminine is getting stronger, right? While you have us masked, some mothers, some of that mother energy in all of us, that divine feminine in all of us is amplifying, and we're becoming more quantum, and we're claiming our sovereignty in a way. Whether I present my little card at the door that says I should be excused from the mask requirement, because I can do that, but there's a part of me that knows that I'm becoming more powerful, I'm completely transcending, and I don't need to resist, I don't need to fight it. I think somehow that energy is just neutralizing and transmuting the whole thing. And everybody's going to show up in it differently. Some people some people really do to help with the rebalancing and the resetting, because many lifetimes maybe they haven't spoken their truth through their throat chakra. It is big for them to say, I'm not wearing a mask, and just walk into the store maskless, right? We all have our ways that we're expressing it. But however it is, I think the key is the empowerment inside that we feel. And I think that's what we're also, in whatever ways we're doing it, is to neutralize the fear. Because the fear is what's kept us trapped here and small, right? Yeah, you're
Well,
smiling.
Uh, yeah, I don't want to go into the details of that, but yeah, we're pretty. There's still, I mean, I don't want to say draconian lockdown, but we're in Illinois, and it's still pretty harsh here. But yeah, everyone has to deal with it in a different way. I see patients all day long, and so we follow the CDC's guidelines. And as of the beginning of this year, it clearly states in the CDC guidelines that diseases, right, diseases such as colds and flus are not affected whatsoever by the mask. And there's 100 years of research which basically states that they're useless regarding the transmission of these types of diseases. Now, there's a revisionism going on right now, and there's obviously a scheme and agenda that's being followed. But we give that option to our patients. If you feel more comfortable wearing one, then by all means wear one. And if you don't feel comfortable about wearing one, or you do not wish to wear one, don't wear one. And I can't tell you that, well, I can tell you that 90+% of my patients are relieved that they don't have to wear one. And you'd think that, well, the agenda is working, and the people are being, brainwashed into wearing it. I mean, the people that are wearing it and at least in my clinical scenario, are still very afraid. But those that aren't wearing it are very knowledgeable about what's happening. I'd say almost 90%
Wow.
of our people know that they're being played, or that there's something else going on. And that's very hopeful. When I see that, I go, well, I mean, what else are we going to do, right? I mean, this is a collective experience that we're all going to have. So let's go pretend like it's medieval again, and we'll all put on the masks. But that's really kind of what I'm looking at. That's hopeful for me, because I'm seeing the truth that's pouring out through people that I never expected to see it from, who might have been asleep, or I would have assumed might have been asleep years ago when I knew them, are now just teaching me about information that they've picked up that is contrary to what the scheme is, or the agenda that's playing out in the major media. So I think it's very helpful.
Well, and that's that energy of like the divinity in us is rising.
Yeah.
Trying to make us smaller, we've had enough. So the collective knows that we're in the transmission that's going to post on Saturday, which is tomorrow, my new videos that will come out. The guides say that we've already voted, And I think that's multidimensional voting. We've already voted. That's how you know that we already know without knowing exactly. We've already voted.
Yeah.
And so there is this awakening into our power, and the more in whatever ways that the game is being played to make us feel smaller, and it is rough and more some states more than others, and it may continue to get like that more chaotic in the next few weeks or a couple of months or whatever it's going to be. But I also think there's going to be this tsunami emancipation. Like there's going to be this tsunami of sovereignty rising. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
that's the, I mean, and we can feel that. We already know it. We already know we voted. We already know the outcome of the elections and the whole thing. We already
Yeah.
get it. That's why we can smile. That's why we can
Yeah.
smile through it.
Well, I'm just thinking about what you're going to say in November and December. You know,
Right.
what information you're going to channel, because again, it's so, the resonance is so strong with what I've been thinking of for many years now. But there's something very spectacular that's going to happen from an astrological perspective towards the end of the year. The winter solstice is, from an astrological perspective, is going to be extremely special time. So I'm still looking at that, and I'm still kind of contemplating it, and we're going to see how things fold out. And the interesting part about all of these energies is that there's no good or bad to anything. You know, I think there's a certain plane of consciousness where you're interpreting it. So if you're interpreting it on a lower plane of consciousness, it could look apocalyptic. But on the other hand, if you're interpreting it from a higher plane of consciousness, it's transformational and into a much higher degree, very positive. So I think that consciousness has arisen, I think, to a high enough degree where there's enough people that are manifesting this within the collective. And I think that we will overcome all of these things. And as far as how much violence and disruption and everything we go through, at the beginning of the year, I was a lot less optimistic than I am now. But we're living in a very heroic time right now. If you looked at the astrology of what's happening, it's kind of mind-blowing. Although everyone looks at the end of the year, I'm looking at what just happened over the last week. And again, there's a great level of empowerment. It's almost like, and I had this feeling, it's almost like the spiritual realm has configured it in just the right way to give us every possible chance of overcoming this. And it was just a matter of us becoming aware of all these portals that were opening up, and all of this energy and all this assistance that we're getting from the natural world and the spiritual world. And I think we're finally starting to realize that our strength is in unity. Our strength is not in separation. And I think that's where we're going eventually. Maybe, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of things that might show up in the next year or two. And I think we're still got a long path ahead of us. But I think that in the end, we'll overcome all of these things. You know, I think that, I mean, I like I said, like you said, why would God design, or the Spirit design, such a rotten world for us to live in, right? And I keep thinking, what a waste! You put all of this knowledge and energy within me. You know, I mean, come on, it's got to manifest into a positive, you know, positive change, right? I mean, we're here for a reason.
Oh yeah,
You know,
exactly. And the fact that it's accessible to us this lifetime is part of the magic. It is part of the magic. Earlier on, it was the struggle to be the salmon swimming upstream, perhaps, right? Or, you know, feeling like we are our own island in some ways, where we were asking questions or seeking in a way that other people weren't seeking. And yet I also think that's created the ripples of light that has helped to, you know, in many ways awaken this planet. And here we are connecting, and many more of us are coming together in this way. And we are coloring that quantum magic and miracles and that infinite possibilities. I felt the same way that you described, not even at the beginning of the year, but actually in 2016. I just started feeling more of a little bit of that awareness, and the guides were coming through with, maybe we could call them prepper like messages of, like, you know, just prepare, have resources, that kind of thing. And something has shifted in this year, especially, of we've moved through some portals. We've just absolutely leaped through some timelines. And, yes, there are some other timelines that might, want to invite all of us to a greater constriction, trauma, fear, and all those things. But I also think that the villains, if we want to call them villains, because they're all aspects of us at some level, but whoever is physically playing the villains right now on the planet, they just have to keep getting crazier and crazier. It's almost like they're meeting together and saying, what the hell do we have to do to wake up the collective? Like,
Listen,
what's it
no,
gonna
let's make
take?
another absurd ruling or some crazy statement. And I feel the same way. I mean,
Right?
it's like, you can't get more absurd than what's happening. And yet they keep doing it. And when are we going to say, oh, yeah, enough is enough? Let's.
Right. And so, and I think there were some messages in the transmissions maybe a year ago this time, which is they're going to keep going until the last one of us awakens. Right. They're going to just keep going until the last one. So, if we can just continue to sort of be our presence and be that essence and have conversations like these, which is what Whole Soul Mastery is all about. The magic is in these connections, because that's what's rippling the frequency through this planet, through our physical vessels. We're doing it. We're sending out the signal. The great awakening is here, right? And the great renaissance is moving through us. And your work, I just want to say, your work, your website is a treasure trove. I was clicking through last night and I thought, oh, you're just doing so many beautiful things. And you have a book that I don't, is it, you still add to it, or, are you still adding to it?
Yeah, the book. Let's not talk about the book, okay? Because I wanted to make another important point. The book is another long story, and technically it's written. It needs to be edited, honestly, and no one say it's a work in progress. It's just arrested at a certain point. But what I wanted to state beforehand was that, and this was conveyed to me in a recent dream, that all of the things that are happening now are happening intentionally, of course, but we've put ourselves in a very let's see, what's the right word, precarious predicament. Right. So we've, I didn't want to take this path. I did not want to be in the situation that I am now, because like you, I saw this coming decades before all this happened. I knew it was coming. Right. And I didn't want to be here at this moment, at this time. I was going to prep, and I was going to be way off the grid and somewhere else. And I was going to just sit this thing out. But circumstances have put me into this situation. And I'm here now for a reason. It's obvious. Now I see why I'm here. But we're in an extremely vulnerable position, in the sense that, okay, we're on this journey, and, we voluntarily are taking this ride. But I do feel that we've placed ourselves in this vulnerable position. And if something doesn't intercede on our behalf, it could be a bad outcome. And what I mean by that is that we've placed ourselves into a position where we need to be saved. We need to connect to some kind of an impulse or spiritual presence that will act almost as a savior type of energy. And I don't think it's going to be external. I think it's going to have to be an internal type of experience. Now, that's the part I'm waiting for, honestly. And I keep saying to myself, if that doesn't come, not every person on the world on this planet is going to have a chance, at least, of understanding or knowing. So we're really in a vulnerable position at this point. And I think that there's going to have to be some kind of a process that will catalyze it in order for the experience to occur. So at least every person, to a certain degree, has that experience that will demonstrate to them, in my personal opinion, that the universe is just, and that there's a better path to take. And I'm still holding my breath for that experience. Will it happen at the end of this year? I don't know. Will it be subtle, or will it be dramatic? I don't know. And so that's kind of where I'm at in all of this, And we'll have to see. I mean, at the beginning of the year, like I said, I was very skeptical. Now I see the powers that are working through us, and I'm becoming less and less skeptical about that. And I feel that this is the time. These are the end times that the scriptures have talked about. And so, but something else has to occur. And I'm not talking about an external manifestation of a savior. I'm talking about something deeply personal. I think that has to happen.
Yeah. I have a sense similar to what you're describing, and have a sense that I can feel the energy's already on the move. I can feel that expanding wave of energy. And I know that when we get caught up in timelines of the when, this is my question to the guides when I was suffering. When is the suffering going to end? And they said, when you are ready. That's kind of what you're talking about. It's an internal clock. It's an internal knowing. It's an internal allowing of the rising. And we each have our own, if you want to say, a timetable for that. We each have our own readiness for that. And yet the amplification of energies astrologically, cosmologically, on this bigger scale, are summoning us to the light, that which is like itself. It is summoning the light in all of us. It is like this. I've seen some films where people were showing some kind of Tesla technology in fictional films, but it was amazing how it was communicating this light which is like itself. I think that some kind of Tesla, could even be Tesla technology, something, and God consciousness coming through, though, that free energy process, whatever that amplification of the light codes is going to be. I think there's going to be summonings that, of course, there's the pain and stuff like the alchemy, the old stuff has to burn away. And for some people, it's going to be a much more rapid quickening because they haven't been preparing for as long as we have. So it's going to be faster. But I think that there is going to be this extraordinary, also, it's just like whenever you see people in movies, like in Ghost, when you see he's like, got to go to the light. He's just got to, it's just so beautiful. I think there is something inside us that despite the pain, we are summoned to the light. We know that's what's for us. We know that's the 0 point. We know that's the birth canal we're all going through. And I think
exactly right. We're going through a birthing process. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt about it.
We've gone through this, and yeah, I mean, I guess there's no point of worrying about it because it's happening, and there's nothing that we can do. I can't do anything. You can't do anything. It's just happening to us.
It's like a baby being born. Let's go. Like, it's never going to go back to that womb environment. It's just got to trust the birthing process and enter a new life. And I think that is happening. And those of us that have had practice of the letting go, we're just the presence of beings that know that energy. And I think we anchor that in, and we help other people in the frequency of that. Yeah. So I want to continue this conversation. We'll have to have more of these.
Okay.
This was beautiful. And I want to thank you for just joining me today, and ask you, can you tell people, where people can find you, your website?
Sure. My website, it's called Beyond the Soul's Meridian, with no apostrophe. So beyondthesoulsmeridian.org. It's been there for, it's my playground. It's been there for about 4 years. Yeah. The book is there if anyone wants to look at the book. There's usually a monthly essay that I post. And I've been making a lot of videos recently because I'm no longer really actively teaching because of the lockdown. So I channeled all of that energy into things that I wanted to do for quite a while. So you might find them entertaining, if nothing else. So you're welcome to visit the site. And if there's any questions or you want to connect, I'd be more than happy to do that through the webpage.
That's so fantastic. I'm going back. I saw Atlantis and I saw the dreams, and there were many things that I'm going to go back and enjoy time with you. It's like a portal. That's the thing, is these videos are like a portal into a frequency with you, Paul. And it's a pretty fabulous place to be. So I hope people do go and check that out. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. You'll see this video at Whole Soul Mastery on YouTube. And you can also find us at wholesoulmastery.com. We have other offerings there, but that's not where our videos are posted, not yet anyway. And I'm also posting these videos now more and more on my channel, Color the Magic on YouTube to just reach a wider audience. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us. And until next time, blessings. Namaste.